Oh, very good morning, guys. In this video I welcome everyone to Sriram's IAS. The objective of this video is to cover all important current affairs for the perspective of upcoming mains in 2023. This session will help you to supplement all your answer writing techniques with some important value addition points. So this session happens at every Saturday and Sunday from 10 to 12:30. That is a 2.5 hour of session. Now in this session on Saturday, I, Anshum Verma, will take your session where I will cover environment ecology, international relations, and polity and governance in respect to the current affairs. And along with this, Sanat sir will take the session on art and culture, science and tech, and economics. These are the areas where Sanat sir will be taking the sessions. So the sessions will happen on Saturday as well as Sunday. Then guys, if you're planning to join UPSC preparation, we have launched a comprehensive batch. A new batch is starting from 26th of July. At Sriram IAS, you can get a holistic coverage for all complete preparation for your UPSC CSE 24. So your prelims plus mains plus interview, everything is covered here. Along with this, you will get a mentorship, a unique mentorship program where you will be assisted in the preparation throughout your year. Then along with this mentorship, you will also get answer writing sessions. Then with answer writing sessions, you will also get optional coaching as well. So these are the list of optionals that are included, that are provided at Sriram IAS. So we have the sociology optional, public ad, PSIR, economics, and history. These are the areas where we will be giving optionals. Along with this, we also have anthropology and geography. So if you are thinking of joining the course, you just have to use this code Srirams, SRIAMS. This code will provide you flat 25% off on all your subscription. You will get a straight 25% off on all your subscription. All right, so let's proceed with our session today. So guys, in this video we're going to talk about the next chapter related to environment and ecology. The chapter is forest conservation. So guys, again I would like to emphasize that I have already taken some chapters like biodiversity and ecosystem, then I have covered energy, then along with this in the last class we have discussed different type of renewable and non-renewable energy and what is their prospects in India. In this video, we are starting with a new unit, that is forest conservation. By the way, if you want to see some sessions on international relations, the video, or there are three 2.5 hours video that I have recorded in the month of June. So you can cover that international relation from there. You can find the link in the description. So let us start today's discussion on forest conservation. So guys, forest conservation, what do you mean by forest? I hope you know that forest plays a very important role in regulating the environment. It plays a significant role in providing us economic products to support the economic activities, and along with economic activities, it also gives the aesthetic value. That means how good we feel after visualizing a forest. So forest conservation is a practice of planning, maintaining forested area for the benefit and sustainability of future generation. So there is a need to conserve our forest because of the depleting environmental condition across different parts of our country. Then guys, planting a tree is a solution for almost all environmental problems, whether it be the modern problems like droughts, floods, excessive rains, landslides, etc., etc. So different type of, or almost every natural disaster can be tackled in a much efficient way if you have a forest conservation strategy. So forest conservation is a practice of planning and maintaining the forested area for the benefit and the sustainability of the future generation. So forest conservation involves upkeep of your natural resources within a forest that is beneficial for the humans, beneficial for the ecosystem, and also beneficial for the environment. So forest cover is defined as all land more than 1 hectare. Now this is what the definition of forest is. So how you can define forest? So forest cover is defined as all land more than 1 hectare in an area with a tree canopy density of more than 10%, irrespective of the ownership and the legal status. So if you have a forested land which is close to 1 hectare, where the canopy density, that means the density of the trees cover 10% of 1 hectare, it is defined as a forest land. So in 2021, the total forest and the tree cover in India was around 80 million hectares. Okay, so the total forest cover, this is as per the forest report, Indian State of Forest report. That means a total 24.62% of Indian land is covered with forest. Okay, then there is a case study. So deforestation and destruction of wetlands are among the leading cause of annual floods in heavily urbanized areas of Kerala and the cities of Mumbai, Chennai, then Bangalore, Bengaluru. Not just Bengaluru, even the floods that we are seeing in northern India, in Delhi, and all different parts of India because of the heavy rainfall. The major reason that we are witnessing floods is because of the deforestation, and yes, in the coastal area or in the transitional area, destruction of wetlands. We will do wetlands in a as a separate topic in the upcoming slide. So guys, what is the benefit for forest conservation? Now, one of the most important benefit for forest conservation is forest restoration, which is crucial for mitigating your climate strategies, or it helps to tackle climate change in a much efficient way. So they tend to regulate the ecosystem, forests tend to protect the biodiversity, and then obviously they play a very important role in maintaining the carbon cycle. Then it provides a ecosystem for the flora and fauna there, and supports livelihood for the traditional forest dwellers which are living around the forested land. So traditional forest dwellers, they are dependent on forest for their livelihood. Then forest also gives habitat to the biodiversity and livelihood for the humans. Now, as to support this argument, we have a data. So 80% of the total biodiversity on the land, that is the terrestrial biodiversity, they are dependent on forest. Then it is also a source for livelihood for many human settlements that include around 60 million indigenous people in India. So imagine how big or how huge is the number of people dependent on the forest conservation in India. So forest provides jobs for more than 13 million people across the world. Imagine that how much people are dependent on forest straight away. And it includes some modern industries as well. All your basic industries like the pharmaceutical industry, okay, the pharma industry, the paper making industry, then the lumbering industry from where you get your furniture, etc., and whatnot. So then after ocean, forests are the largest storehouses of carbon. So forest, as it regulates carbon cycle, so this is the second biggest resource that gives you such a big carbon sink. So whatever pollution that we are doing, the man-made pollution that we are doing, it is your forest that will help to mitigate that pollution. Then further, from the perspective of the population, we have just seen that around 350 million people around the world, they depend on the forest for their livelihood, and more than the population of United States. This number is more than the population of United States. Then it supports 1 billion people, rural people, that depend on forest, like collecting some minor residues, some minor products for their livelihood. Then they are dependent for forest or for their firewood. Okay, so all these reasons makes forest a important resource. So around 250 million people who live in the forest and savanna have incomes less than $1.25 a day. Then forest conservation helps us to increase biodiversity. So a good green cover will provide habitat for birds, butterflies, insects, and especially in the city where the concrete and asphalt dominate, these small green covers are like a miracle for all these creatures. So it is that they are dependent on all these things totally. If you know this fact, there is one bird, sparrow. In Hindi, this is known as goraiya. इसको हिंदी में क्या कहते हैं? goraiya. So if you know that this small bird used to exist in the urban areas, let's say from 15-20 years from now, आज से 15 से 20 साल पहले ये सारी birds exist करती थी. But due to more and more concretization and habitat destruction, पेड़ों के काटने की वजह से इतने ज़्यादा कंक्रीटाइजेशन, अर्बन एरियाज में कंक्रीटाइजेशन बढ़ने की वजह से, एंड स्पेसिफिकली जो टेलीफोन टावर्स हम यूज़ करते हैं उनसे एमिटेड रेडिएशंस की वजह से इन बर्ड्स का हैबिटेट डिस्ट्रक्ट हुआ, और अब ये नेक्स्ट टू इम्पॉसिबल है. To cite them, it is next to impossible. It is still available in small population in areas such as some green covers like Delhi Ridge, Yamuna Ridge. यहाँ पर आपको फिर भी एक आध मिल जाएगा, but in most part of Delhi, this bird is now almost extinct. All right. So then increase in the feeling of well-being. So forest also gives an aesthetic value. Okay, it gives you an aesthetic value. Living and working in a green environment obviously will give you a positive effect. Okay, it will offer more relaxation. It will tend to reduce your stress levels. Then what are the other benefits for forest conservation? It provides a rainwater buffer. For example, any forest will help to regulate the rains of the area. Okay, it will help to replace the paving stone with plants. A green area absorbs the rainwater, then it helps to restabilize the groundwater, or to replenish groundwater as well. So it reduces the peak load on the sewage system. Now imagine that if you have more tree cover in urban areas, so all these trees will allow the water to percolate down in the aquifers, or in the storage, which is the natural storage of the groundwater. So all these trees will help this down. So less and less water will now flow towards the drains. When less water will flow towards the drain, less will be the pressure on the sewage system, and then it can reduce the risk of urban flooding. It will reduce the risk of urban flooding. Then it offers healing environment. That means obviously greenery around you will encourage faster recovery for patients which are which are suffering from some or the other kind of mental, physical ailments. Obviously a green environment will give you a positive reflection, a positive sense of feeling. So this aesthetic value will help to improve your health. Then erosion protection. Obviously when you cultivate green plants as a boundary line, it will help not only against the water erosion, but also it will help against your any kind of rains. All right. So then living filters. Obviously all these forests, they act as a filter. That means they absorb, especially I'm talking about, let's say I consider wetlands as example. So I will do wetlands in detail, but this is just for example. Like wetlands are the forest cover which are found in the transitional area around a aquatic ecosystem. So the greenery or the plants there are known as the kidneys of the earth. They are known as the kidneys of the earth. Now, why it is known as the kidneys of the earth? Now, basically, all these green cover, the roots are designed in such a way that they absorb all the harmful sediments. And many wetland trees are also believed that they have a capacity to absorb even heavy metals. So it can absorb heavy metals as well. So imagine that how much they are helping in reducing the pollution level around the area. All right. So they can reduce nitrogen and phosphorus concentration by up to 99%. Then it gives unmatched biodiversity. So tropical forest roughly covers 10% of the earth land, but they are home to at least half of all the living species on the planet. So we all know that in the tropical region, you will find maximum biodiversity. You will find the maximum biodiversity in this region, and along with this maximum biodiversity, this area occupies only the amount of forest in this region is around 10%, but this region holds almost 50% of the total, 50% of the total biodiversity of this planet. Then let's understand, after understanding the benefits for forest conservation, let us understand what are the causes for deforestation, or why there is so much deforestation happening. Now the first important cause for deforestation is the rampant urbanization. Okay, the rampant urbanization, that means the land, we are degrading the land. As the populations are increasing, more and more requirement for land is there for human settlement, for agriculture, agriculture. Then since 1850, around 35% of the CO2 emission resulted directly from the land use change, especially from the forest conversions. Okay, so imagine that we are cutting down the trees, it have a negative vicious impact. First of all, you will have less tree to absorb CO2, and already what pollution that we are doing, it will also increase. Less area to absorb CO2 and the pollution levels are also increasing. So it will have a multiplier kind of effect on the CO2 emissions. Then pollution. So like most of the countries, India is also struggling with the quantity of plastic waste generated by humans. Now this possesses a straightaway threat to the forest, because all this plastic material, the synthetic fibers and all these things that we are creating, they are non-biodegradable. So that means it remains in the soil for a very long time. Okay, it remains in the soil for a very long time. Then forest fire. Now every year, like this year in California, if I talk about some Indian examples, Goa, then Northeast. So, and in the world, there is one more example, the Australian forest fires. So each year, millions and millions acre of land around the world are destroyed and degraded by the fire. So imagine this, how much area under forest cover is destructed because of the rampant forest fires. Now the forest fires can occur for n number of reasons. It can occur even because of anthropogenic reasons, as well as it can occur because of man-made reasons as well, natural reasons as well. Okay. Then the next cause for destruction of forest are invasive species. Introduction of invasive species. Now, to elaborate, invasive species are also called as invasive alien species. They are also called as invasive alien species. Now, what do you mean by invasive alien species? So these are the species that are not native to that particular habitat. Okay, they are not native to that particular habitat. All right. So what happens is, like for example, if I introduce a tree, or let me give you an example of an important invasive species, Proceiferus julifera. This tree, which is the scientific name, that in regular day-to-day language, it is known as kikar. Now this kikar tree is very common in North India, around Delhi, Haryana, Rajasthan, Uttar Pradesh. This belt, it has a rampant availability of kikar. So what this kikar do? Basically, this is an invasive alien species. This was planted by the Britishers. So as we know, Britishers were degrading our forest to the maximum detrimental effect on India. But under the pressure of the people of India, they also showcase themselves that yes, we are planting trees. We are increasing forest cover. So what they have done, they have cut down all the native trees from around North India, and then they started planting this kikar. Now what does this kikar do? Basically, wherever the kikar is growing, the roots of kikar will penetrate deeper. So it will absorb more groundwater. It will absorb more groundwater. Then it will make the soil acidic in nature. Now this acidic soil will not allow other plants to grow nearby this tree. And then one more important aspect of this kikar is that it spreads very fast. It grows very fast. Okay, so this is the issue, that why invasive alien species are threat to deforestation. Then the next important cause for deforestation is climate change. So forest loss is both a cause and an effect of changing the climate. It is a cause as well as the effect. So we are cutting more trees, and because of climate change, more trees are being destructed. So both the things are happening. So climate change can damage the forest, for instance, drying out tropical rainforest and increasing the fire damage in the boreal forest and all other forests are the main reason for deforestation. Then a practice which is very detrimental for uh, deforestation is your jhum cultivation, or which is also known as shifting cultivation. Which is also known as uh, shifting cultivation. So, or another name for this is slash and burn cultivation. So basically this type of cultivation is practiced in northeast. हमारे उत्तर पूर्वी राज्यों में ये practice is quite prevalent. Now what happens in this kind of practice, they cut a small piece of land, a small parcel of land, and then they burn that land. Okay, they cut it and then they burn it. So, and on the burnt land, they practice agriculture. Then they will move to, when the fertility will exhaust in that region, after 2-3 years, they will shift to another patch of land where they will do this exercise same in a repetitive manner. Okay, then developmental projects. So developmental projects like hydroelectric projects, dams, construction activities, all of them, they result in a massive destruction of the forest. This is another cause. Like if you want to create a hydroelectric project, so in that you have to store a water at a certain height. It is a storage project. So what happens is that in order to store a good amount of water through a dam, you need to have a large area submerged underwater. So for this reason, generally the forests are cut down from that place. So it results in massive destruction of the forest. Then increasing population. So there is a high demand for fuel wood. Like even today, the people in rural India, they are dependent on the forest for the firewood. They're dependent on firewood, and due to increasing population, it creates a pressure on the forest resources. Then next is urbanization. So rapid establishment of industries and urban cities is another reason for the increased demand that leads towards deforestation. Okay, so as cities are expanding, more and more area are coming under the forest. So this is something what we call as a major reason for the deforestation. Then what is the consequence for the loss of forest? So the first major important consequence is the impact on water cycle. So around 30% of the world's freshwater supply are provided by the tropical rainforests, because we all know that they tend to store more groundwater. So this is one reason. Then deforestation reduces the moisture released into the atmosphere. So when you have more trees availability, so more moisture is released, and as a result of more moisture, you will get ample rain. But when you will see that there is less of forest, there is less of moisture availability, so even your rains also falls down. Then next is impact on biodiversity. So every year deforestation causes an extinction of around 50,000 species of animal, plants, insects, because it is straightaway linked to the habitat destruction. It is straightaway linked to habitat destruction. All right. Then economic impact. So some studies predict that by 2050, the deforestation and other factors will reduce the global GDP by 7%. So imagine that how much you are dependent on these forests, and you are dependent on this forest so much so that uh, your economic activity will hamper. And when economic activity will hamper, ultimately the destruction of forest will also hamper. Then there is impact on human health. Directly or indirectly, the deforestation can serve as the conduit for the spread of variety of infectious diseases. Like you are basically changing the natural balance of an ecosystem. So when you change this natural balance of an ecosystem, obviously there will be a uh, counter effect that will happen, like the spread of Nipah virus in Kerala. This virus got spread. Then Ebola is also one of the example of zoonotic disease. So guys, any disease that spread from animal to human is a zoonotic disease. ऐसे डिजीज को zoonotic disease कहते हैं. So इसकी वजह से you will see that more and more diseases will keep on spreading amongst the humans. Then what are the other impacts? So other impact is loss of habitat. Other impact is loss of habitat. So obviously I have already shared this data that 70% of the land animal and plant species, they live in the forest. So if you cut down the forest, obviously you will impact 70% of the biodiversity on this planet. Then temperature variations. A tree helps to regulate the local temperature. A forest helps to regulate the local temperature. So imagine a hot sunny day where you are getting troubled with the scorching heat coming from the top. गर्मियों में हम quite often किसी भी पेड़ के नीचे जाकर we tend to take that shade. How we take that shade? Why we take that shade? Because under a tree there is comparatively a cooler climate. So forest, cutting down of forest or loss of forest can have a drastic impact on the temperature variation. Like desert, like it during the daytime the temperature may rise at a very high scale, and then it can fall very drastically. So there are different temperature variations that can occur because of the loss of forest. And yes, it is also the reason where more floods are coming in urban areas because of the urban heat island effect. Then increased greenhouse gases. So in addition to the loss of habitat, lack of trees will allow greater amount of greenhouse gases to be released into the atmosphere. Soil erosion and flooding. So without forest, the soil erode and wash away, causing increased soil erosion and flooding. Then loss of net present value. Now what do you mean by this point? Now it is mandatory one-time payment that a user make for diverting forest land to a non-forest use. So uh, you have paid, like whatever forest that you are cutting down, you are carrying out that one time payment for converting that into a non-forest use, but what is the value that is lost, it cannot be scaled down to the economic level. Then let us understand that what are the efforts that has been taken to protect the forest in India. So at national level, we have the Indian Forest Policy of 1952. So this colonial forest strategy was recognized the need to grow forest cover at least 1/3 of the total land area, which was extended in this way. And as of now, we have 24.6% of forest land. So we are still lagging behind that 1/3 of target. So we have to increase almost 6% more forest cover in these times. Then Forest Conservation Act of 1980. So this act made it clear that carrying a sustainable agroforestry in forest regions require central authorization. So there is a need to carry out sustainable agroforestry, agriculture along with forestry, with central administration. So a violation or absence of a permit was considered a crime. So if you are cutting down the forest without any permit, without any prior permission, it is considered a crime as per Forest Conservation Act 1980. Now, Forest Policy of 1988, it focuses on ecological importance of wood and participatory management. So here the target was to increase community participation. And it was marked with a big categorical shift away from the economic concerns. Then the other acts that cover conservation of forest are the National Green Tribunal Act. Now this led to the establishment of your NGT, National Green Tribunal. This was formed to resolve cases related to environmental protection, preservation of forest and other natural resources, as well as enforcement of any environmental legal rights. Then compensatory afforestation fund, also known as the CAMPA fund. Now this is something a very unique approach in tackling the forest. So in order to minimize the effects of diverting forest land, it seeks to provide a institutional mechanism at the center as well as the state and union territory to ensure the prompt utilization of funds in an effective and transparent manner in the lieu of diverted forest land. So let's say you have cleared a forest patch in a region. Now you have to create funds which are equivalent to the value of the forest land which is cleared here. So parallelly, you will create a fund that will help you to grow the same amount of forest at some other place. So this is your compensatory afforestation fund. That means a kind of compensating what is growing there. Then at international level, so United Nations Conference on Environment and Development in 1992, Rio Declaration on Environment and Development was signed, which is also known as Earth Summit. It is the first Earth Summit that the stakeholders in the summit was almost every country on this planet. So it contained total 11 principles that were supposed to guide all the countries in future sustainable development. Then Agenda 21. Again, it is also an action plan concerning sustainable development, and it is non-binding in nature. Agenda 21. So it has all those principles which are needed to tackle or to carry out sustainable development. Then forest principles. At international level, it makes many recommendations for the conservation and sustainable development of forestry and for the non-binding purposes. Then we also have a very important convention to conserve your biodiversity. So Convention on Biological Diversity, that is CBD, 1992 was also a step towards conserving biological diversity or biodiversity with involvement of the entire world. So this focuses not only protection of forest but also biodiversity. Then forest conservation program. So this forest conservation program has a goal to maintain and restore the forest ecosystem and promote conservation, sustainable management, and equitable distribution of the full range of forest goods and services. Then Bond Challenge. So it is basically a global effort to bring 150 million hectares of the world's deforested and degraded land to restore them by 2020, and around 350 million hectares we will be restoring by 2030. So Bond Challenge is basically to restore the deforested land. A very important convention that you can quote in your exams. Then guys, a very important bill which is coming up in the upcoming, it has been already presented in the parliament, and it is expected that the parliament will pass this bill in the upcoming monsoon session. Okay, so this bill will try to replace all the new act. Like for example, if you see, the Forest Conservation Act in India belongs to 1980. So it is quite an old act now. Okay, it is quite an old act. So there is a need to replace this act with some new laws. So that is why a new bill has been proposed in the parliament. So what are the changes made in the bill? So the preamble of this bill states that it suggests that that the preamble be included in the act in order to include countries' long history of protecting forest, their biodiversity, and address the climate change issue. So This is what the preamble of the act looks like. Then this act will also carry out restrictions on the activities of forest. So it will forbid the use of forest land for the non-forest purpose, and only with the central government's approval these limitations can be lifted. So that means any forest around you cannot be converted to a non-forest use until and unless you have the permission from the central government. Then power to issue directions. So according to this bill, any other authority, organization that is part of or acknowledged by the federal government of the state or union territory may receive the direction regarding the application of the act. So that means there will be a authority that will be made at the state level and at the union territory level, whatever the case may be. So according to that authority will be responsible for tackling the forest of that state, and that authority will work only when they are involved or when they get directions from the central government. Then exceptions. So what are the exceptions? Now this is very critical in nature. That means many environmental groups have criticized the draft bill of the Forest Conservation Amendment Bill. So it aims to exempt any linear projects within 100 kilometer of international boundary of LAC. That means the Forest Conservation Act does not cover 100 kilometer of areas that are closer to the international border, especially LAC and LOC. So that means the central government has now the authority to take action on all these forests which lies within the 100 kilometer boundaries from LAC, that is the China border, and LOC, that is the Pakistani border, because from the perspective of national security. Then the next amendment is 10 hectares of security related infrastructure as well as the projects including in forestry operations such as zoo, animal safari construction, ecotourism facilities, silviculture operation are also exempted from the proposed modification. So that means we can do a bit of deforestation for all these purposes like zoo, animal safari, ecotourism, development of silviculture and all these things. Silviculture is basically forest, growing forest. Then forest conservation bill has, other than the exemptions, there are some issues related to this. The first issue is the exemption. So the modification, like all forest land that are not part of the designated area are listed in the official document and they are existing before 1980, they will be exempted from this act's application. So that means the forest area that is declared as forest after 1980 is only covered in this bill, not the forest land that is declared as per the official record before 1980s. So 1980 के बाद का ही forest land, declared forest land is covered as a part of this bill. The Supreme Court's 1996 decision, which guaranteed that every forest document in official record receives a legal protection against deforestation, it is sidestepped by this. So this is basically changing the Supreme Court's order. So in a way, this provision will be challenged in the Supreme Court. Then next is misuse of this bill. So the bill states that the proposed an ecotourism facility and any other purpose. Like if you see here, uh, uh, for what area at least 10 hectares of land can be cleared, it says that for security related infrastructure, for forestry operation, for zoo, for animal safari, ecotourism, for all these things you can cut down the forest. Okay, and for any other purpose. So this any other purpose gives the authority to the central government to carry out to carry out this thing, to carry out cutting down of forest without any hindrance. So this provision, any other purpose, can be misused according to the critics. The central government can work on their own whims and fancies in cutting down the forest. The next is plantation as a threat. So additionally, you will find that plantation is a serious threat to Indian forestry, where we are displacing the natural ecosystem. Now, what is plantation as a threat? Like, for example, you are not allowing the natural forest to grow on its own. You are planting trees from some other place to that area. So, don't you think that this can retaliate, because those native trees do not belong to that particular place? Then next is the indigenous people and the forest conservation. What role the indigenous people play in forest conservation? So according to UN, indigenous people are the inheritors and the practitioners of the unique cultures and the way of relating to the people and environment. So indigenous people are basically the tribal people, for a better understanding. So the tribal people of India, they are dependent on, they are straight away dependent on the forest for their livelihood. And the forest dwellers, the Traditional Forest Dwellers and Rehabilitation Act recognizes all these tribal people as the owner of the forest. So since they are dependent on the forest, it is their right, they have the first right on the forest resources. And also guys, we cannot blame them that all these people are responsible for the destruction of forest. Tribal people, though they are dependent on the forest, but whatever they extract from the forest, whatever, let's say they are cutting down the forest, they always depend on the forest resources, believing or maintaining the natural balance of the forest. Maintaining the natural balance of the forest. Then there are some issues with the indigenous people, like disruption after designation of the place as a World Heritage Site. So whenever a place has been designated as a World Heritage Site, the local people have to move away from the natural habitat, or their movement are restricted. Then lax implementation of the Forest Right Act. Like many Forest Right Act basically recognizes them as the owner of the forest. However, many states in India have a very a very bad record in implementing the Forest Right Act in the Forest Right Act in the protection of the forest. Then there is another debate of development versus conservation. So basically, the land claimed by indigenous people has been snatched away for building dams, mining, railway lines, road, power plants. So there is directly a confrontation that whether you can carry out the development, or the second aspect is that you have to work on the conservation. So imagine that the amount of land which is snatched away from these people, it is not even compensated. They do not even get compensated fairly. They do not get a proper rehabilitation places, like the people of Narmada Bachao Andolan. These people are still struggling to get hold on to get hold on the forest land. Then illegal encroachment of land, this is another issue, where according to the government records, more than 3 lakh hectares of the reserve forest land is under encroachment. Then conserving natural flora. So the magico religious beliefs of plants, tribal communities, they consider god and goddesses. Habitat leads to their conservation in their natural habitat. So what does this point means? That the indigenous people tend to conserve forest because they consider forest as the sacred groves. They are tend to conserve forest as sacred groves. Now what are sacred groves? Basically they believe, the tribal people, they do not carry out the natural regular worship like what we do in Hinduism. Rather they are involved in worshipping the nature itself. So there are many trees which are having which are very auspicious for these people, okay, and that is why they never harm such forest land. Then another issue is application of traditional knowledge. So the indigenous people and biodiversity, they complement each other. So over the time, natural communities have gathered a pool of indigenous knowledge for the cultivation of the medicinal plant and their propagation. So all these traditional people, they have a very good knowledge of the medicinal value of all the plants and the trees around that place. Then conserving the sacred groves. Now this is what I have just explained in the point above. So India's ethnic people have played a vital role in preserving the biodiversity of the several virgin forests. They have conserved the flora and fauna in the sacred groves of the tribal. Like guys, to understand sacred groves, let me give an example. Do you know the peepal tree, the banyan tree? They hold quite a importance in your Hindu religious cultures. So we have so many ceremonial, ceremonies which have a cultural significance. So we tend to visit these trees and we worship these trees as gods. So a same kind of a concept is taken by the tribal people as well, where they not only just worship one single or two single trees, rather they worship a complete patch of forest as very sacred. So in order to understand this, you can link this with Avatar movie. Okay, you can link this with the Avatar movie. So sustaining and biodiversity. So they manage their way of living. They balance. They have a very perfect balance between taking care of their needs from the forest along with a sustainable way of living that these people carry out. Okay, so they tend to create a balance between conservation and the resource extraction from the forest. So guys, a very important case study that you can add in your exam. So there is an indigenous knowledge system of the Akas tribe in Arunachal Pradesh. This is a tribe in Arunachal Pradesh, guys. So they not only plant species, but not all the plant species are taken out of the forest. They tend to have a kind of approach where they do not kill or consume certain animals. They do not cut down certain trees, and then they always spare the young and the pregnant animals in the forest. That means they do not damage any similar kind of animals. Then young saplings in the forest are left alone. Then guys, there are certain plants and young saplings that are left alone. From neighboring forest, only plant components are necessarily taken. So as a result, these individuals establish an environmentally beneficial relationship with the local ecology. Then what could be the way forward? So recognition of the rights of the indigenous people to preserve the rich biodiversity of the region. Then effective implementation of the Forest Right Act through the effective trust building between its agencies working in the area, the indigenous people treating them as equal citizens like everyone else in the country. Traditional knowledge of the tribal people for conservation. So the Biodiversity Act of 2002 mentions equitable sharing of benefits arising out of the use of knowledge of the biological resources and local communities. Then guys, next subtopic from mangroves are next subtopic from forest conservation is mangroves. So what are mangroves? Now this is they are also a they play a very important role in managing the forest ecosystem. They have a very significant role. So what are mangroves? Basically, it is a type of a forest that generally it is formed in a that are generally found in the intertidal regions. Okay, they are generally formed in the intertidal regions. So one important ability of these mangroves are that they are salt tolerant. They are also referred as the tidal forest because they belong to the category of tropical wetland rainforest ecosystem. So globally, the mangrove forest occupy around 2 lakh square kilometer across the globe. And according to 2021 Forest Survey report, it estimates that 4992 square kilometers of land in India are covered by the mangroves, which accounts to almost 0.15% of the total geographical area. Now, over the past century, almost 40% of the mangroves covers have been lost. Now, according to the research, Kerala, for example, it has lost almost 95% of its mangroves during the past 3 decades. Then, what are the other importance of mangroves? Now, first, mangroves are located in a transitional area between two important ecosystems. So one important ecosystem is terrestrial ecosystem and then aquatic ecosystem. So basically this common ecosystem or this common interaction zone is known as the transition zone, or it has the edge effect. Now what is so important about this edge effect? It will have, so for example, the aquatic ecosystem will have its own species of flora and fauna. Terrestrial ecosystem will have its own species of flora and fauna, whereas this zone will have some species of aquatic ecosystem, some species of terrestrial ecosystem, and some species which are unique to this portion only. So it means that they have a very high species diversity in comparison to the terrestrial or the marine ecosystem. It has these regions are having the maximum biodiversity available in the region. Then mangroves are the most productive terrestrial ecosystem on the planet Earth. It is one of the most productive ecosystem. So they are also natural renewable resource. For instance, like Sundarban in Gangetic Delta supports around 30 plant species of mangroves only. So imagine that how much productive and diverse these regions are. Then it provides a ecological niche for a wide variety of organisms. Now, what do you mean by the niche? The functional role. The functional role that any species plays is known as the ecological niche. So they serve as feeding, breeding, grounds for fisheries, and also provide timber and wood for the fuel. Then mangroves also act as the filters and the purifiers as well, because like all the rivers which are flowing through the land, they ultimately meet into the oceans. But before meeting into the ocean, the river is generally it has all the vegetative cover. The mangrove tend to absorb all the natural filters, all the natural sediments from the flow of water. Then employment benefit. So there are different type of employment benefit or the economic opportunities that all these mangroves provide. Then employment benefit. So it provides numerous employment opportunities to a varied type of people, whether it be the fisheries, people dependent on fisheries, whether it be the traditional forest dwellers depending on the medicinal resources available in the forest, etc., etc. Then mangroves also act as a shock absorber. What do you mean by shock absorber? They tend to absorb all those cyclones, impact of cyclones and tsunamis. So whenever there is natural disasters like cyclone and tsunamis comes, so there is huge winds that blow. So all these mangroves act as a windbreaker. Along with the wind as a windbreaker, they also tend to break the series of waves that are generated either in cyclone or tsunami. So they act as a wave breaker as well. So in both the cases, they help to prevent coastal erosion. And that is why they are known as the shock absorbers. Then guys, what are the causes for the depletion of mangroves? Some important causes are the causes associated with the climate change. So sea level rise and coastal erosion. So due to global warming, we all know that the sea level is continuously rising and flooding all these mangrove forests. So whenever there is a threat of sea level rise, mangrove forest will be the first to witness that threat. So this has resulted in their depletion. Then reduction in the river water levels. So mangroves are more prevalent in the areas where the rivers meet the sea. This I have already explained, because they are found in the transitional area where the aquatic ecosystem meets with the terrestrial ecosystem. So they are found at such places. So the system requires a fine balance between salt and sweet water to survive. But when there are reduction in the water levels, you will find that it will straight away impact the growth of mangroves, because more salt water or the sea water will inundate the land. That means it will enter landward. The sea water will enter landward. Then invasion by alien species. So introduction of non-native alien species of plants and animals are causing a threat to the endemic species in the region. So what do you mean by invasive species? I have already explained in this session. So any species which is foreign to that land will come there, will destruct the natural ecosystem of that area. So it will hamper the endemic species of that place. Now what do you mean by endemic species? The species which are found nearby. These are known as the endemic species. Then damming of rivers, like we tend to divert the river water by constructing dams. We tend to reduce the river flow by constructing series of dams. Now this also has a very negative impact on the monsoon, because even in this case the sea water will have its more concentration in the transitional area. So this is one more reason. Then destruction of coral reefs. So the causes of mangroves destruction is also linked to the coral reefs. So because mangroves are responsible for absorbing all the sediments entering the sea, but since mangroves are being destructed, more and more sediments are entering the sea. When more sediments will enter the sea, what will happen? It will block the pores of all the corals which are there, and hence it will lead to destruction of corals. Then yes, pollution also play a very critical threat when it comes to mangrove destruction. So the amount of fertilizers, pesticides that we are using, then the domestic sewage which is directly sent into the rivers, all these things are responsible for destruction of the mangroves. And the last point is climate change. So low rainfall, very high sea surface and air temperature have caused a severe threat to the survival of the mangroves. Let us now understand that what are the steps that have been taken to protect these mangroves. First, we will look into the budget of this year. That means the for the time period of 23-24. So in this, India has participated at an international level, which is the Mangrove Alliance for Climate, which was established during the 27th Paris Conference of United Nations Framework Convention, which was held in Egypt. Then we have also become the part of MISHTI program, full form Mangrove Initiative, Shoreline Habitat and Tangible Incomes. So this initiative was also launched. Then a new program called a Mangrove Initiative Mishti would make easier for the government to establish or restore more mangroves in the salt pan areas along Indian coastline. Then the Manrega, the Campa Fund, and other funding sources will tend to cover the recovery of these mangroves. So they will trying to link mangroves with Manrega program, Campa program, etc. etc. Campa program, I have already explained it in the some slides before. Campa stands for Compensatory Afforestation Management Program. Okay, compensatory management afforestation management program. Then intensive afforestation of coastal mangrove is the goal for the new plan. Then efforts taken to protect these mangroves. So we have a global mangrove alliance. So the goal for doubling the mangrove coverage over existing levels by 2030 is one of the major goals. So global mangrove alliance, you can use this as a initiative in the answer, global mangrove alliance, and especially 2-3 things that you can use. One, Mishti. Then along with this Mishti, that Indian participation in the global mangrove alliance according to the COP 27. Then mangroves for the future. This is another program by IUCN and UNDP. So according to this, both of these organizations, they are, according to the reports, the organization is doing a gender integrated mangrove restoration and sustainable development initiative in numerous Asian countries. Then next is Blue Carbon Initiative, another important initiative at international level. So International Blue Carbon Initiative is focused on mitigating climate change through conservation and restoration of coastal and marine ecosystem. So International Society for Mangrove is a non-governmental organization established in 1990 to promote the study of mangroves with the purpose of enhancing the conservation, rational management and sustainable utilization. Then what is the way forward? So we require a systematic and periodic environmental monitoring for existing mangroves. So there should be a documentation of various faunal species dependent on these forests. So we need the use of biorestoration to revive the degraded stretch of mangroves. We need biorestoration. Now what are biorestoration? These are the techniques to maintain the original biodiversity through natural restoration. So the ecological restoration revives the mangroves at a faster rate than the natural regeneration. Then we need to enhance our restoring efforts. So instead of monoculture plantation, that means planting just one species, what we can do, we can create more species diversity. That means we can plant mangroves of different variety in one region. This will raise the forest in a much more resilient manner. Like how it will be more resilient? Let's say one species is tolerant to a specific type of salinity. So let's say a salinity increases in that region for some reason. So it will impact only limited species, not the complete forest will be destructed. So this is the main solution, restoration of the forest. Then legislation requirement. So we need to enhance our legislative measures to enforce more legislation on the protection of the mangroves. Then private sector establishment. So near the mangroves, it can be incentivized to take up conservation activities. So private sector establishment can work in this scenario or in this area. Then community participation for the conservation and management. So the communities dependent on these forests can be supported to take up alternative economic activities to increase the sustainable use of these mangroves. So we need to include different communities. We need to have a proper conservation and management strategy so that we can work on these lines. Then cultural advantages that can be leveraged in the mangrove conservation. So for example, the Bon Bibi, which is a forest goddess worshipped by the people of different faiths, even Hindu and Muslim, they worship Bon Bibi in Sundarban. So it is an example of a sacred grove. All right. So this is the example of sacred grove. The next is the Indian State of Forest Report 2021. Now this is a very important report because this report highlights the status of forest in our country. So the total forest and tree cover in our country is 24.62%. It covers around 7.13 lakh square kilometer area, which was 21.71 geographical area of the country. So the total forest cover is 21.71%, whereas the total forest and tree cover is 24.62%. Then tree cover is 2.91% of the geographical area of our country. So you add this 21.71 and 2.91, you will come to 24.6%. Then tree outside forest. That means the trees, areas which has trees, but they are not declared as outside forest. So if you remember that I have given you the definition of forest. So the area that has at least 1 hectare of land and 10% of 10% of the land, or that land has a 10% canopy cover, is said to be the forest cover of India. Then states having the largest extent of the tree outside forest. So Maharashtra has the largest trees outside forest. So top 5 states in terms of increase in forest cover. So we have Andhra Pradesh recorded the highest cover, Telangana, Odisha, Karnataka, Jharkhand. Then largest forest cover is Madhya Pradesh, rank 1, Arunachal Pradesh, rank 2, Chhattisgarh, Odisha, Maharashtra. The states of northeastern region of our country have the highest percentage of forest cover, with respect to the geographical area of the state. And in this scale, Mizoram has the highest forest cover with respect to their geographical area. Next, Arunachal Pradesh, Meghalaya, Manipur and Nagaland. So forest cover in hill district is around 40.17%. So guys, see, you cannot remember all these datas, but at least remember the total forest cover. The states which have recorded the highest forest cover, and what is the status of the highest forest cover in India. So in terms of the total area, Madhya Pradesh, and in terms of the overall area with respect to the land, it is Mizoram. Then the total forest cover in the tribal districts is around 37.53% of the geographical areas of the total forest cover in northeastern region is around 64.66% of its geographical area. So the current assessment shows that a decrease in forest cover to an extent of 0.60%. Then what is the value of total carbon stock? So the total carbon stock in the forest is estimated as at 72.7204 million tons of total area since 2019. Now forest prone to fire. So the analysis reveals that 22.27% of the forest cover is prone to the forest fires. Then bamboo forest. So the total bamboo bearing in the country is estimated at 1,49,443 square kilometer area, and there has been a decrease recorded in the overall bamboo forest around 10,594 square kilometer area of a decrease that was recorded from in comparison to the last state forest report of 2019. So guys, this was all about forest conservation. Now we'll move on to the next type of conservation, that is the water conservation and management. This is the next chapter that we are starting. So what do you mean by the water conservation? So basically, the water resource management is the activity of planning, developing, distributing, managing the optimum use of water resources. So water resource management includes planning, developing, distributing, in which we can manage the water resource with a optimum utilization. So Sustainable Development Goal 6 aims to ensure the availability, sustainable management of water for all by 2030. By this definition, we are leaving no one behind. So by 2030, the aim is to provide sustainable management of water for all, providing safe drinking water to all. Now this is also covered under Jal Jeevan Mission, where the target is to provide and connect every household of our India with piped drinking water. Then what are the issues and challenges? So the first important issue is the spatial and the temporal variation in water. So like availability of water in terms of different regions. So water availability changes in different regions, like the South Indian states, they have less of non-perennial rivers, they have more of non-perennial rivers, so the water levels in these rivers are drastically low, and it depends on the monsoon season. So that is why many places lack good water resources. Then temporal variation means that the rainfall in India is not uniform. So there are some places which receives good rainfall in limited time of the year. Okay, like India receive its 80% of its rainfall in just 3 months of time span, that is July to September. So this spatial and temporal variation is one important reason. Then demand and supply. So rising population, increasing water demand, and falling per capita availability. Then over exploitation and depletion of groundwater resources. This is another important challenge. So we know that there are states such as Haryana, Punjab, where we are extracting more groundwater than replenishing it. The main reason is the unscientific agriculture that is happening. So there is a decline of every year by 0.4 meter because of this indiscriminate extraction of groundwater, inefficient irrigation practice, and rapid urbanization. So even in urban area, the people are dependent on these tube wells. Then faulty cropping pattern. So like we are growing water intensive crops in the areas where there are shortages of water availability. Like we are growing sugarcane in Maharashtra, we are growing rice in Haryana and Punjab. So these reasons are uh, basically responsible for creating the issues and challenges when it comes to the faulty cropping pattern. Poor water quality. So the major reason for contamination of water are sewage and untreated waste that are discharged into the water bodies. The release of chemicals, release of effluents into the rivers, streams and other water bodies are the main reason. Then poor storage facility. So in India, we lack proper storage facility. That means only whatever rain that we get, there is hardly any amount of rain that we can store. Whereas the there is such a proper storage facility which is available in the developed countries, which is around 250%. Then what is the impact of the water crisis on humans? First, the economic risk associated. So as water crisis worsens, the production capacity, utilization, new investment in capacity will decline over the period of time, threatening the livelihood of millions of people. Then risk to food security. Obviously, the water availability is directly linked with the food security for the country. So about 74% of the area under the wheat cultivation and 65% of the area under rice cultivation are right now facing significant water scarcity, water scarcity problem. Then groundwater resources. So it accounts for 62% of the irrigation water, declining in 52% of the cases and highlight a serious water concentration in agriculture sector. Health. Storage of water is a major obstacle to the public health and development. The World Bank estimates around 20% of the communicable diseases that are linked in India, they spread through water. One of the important disease is typhoid, cholera, okay, hepatitis. So all these major diseases, they spread through water. So this is the impact of water crisis. Then the shortage of water further creates dispute among the state. So the interstate disputes are also rising. So we have Satluj Yamuna Link Canal. Then we have Kaveri water dispute between Karnataka and Tamil Nadu. This dispute again got aggravated because Karnataka is constructing Meka Datu project. Then there is adverse effect on biodiversity. So the main threats facing biodiversity globally right now are destruction, degradation and fragmentation of habitat, which ultimately affects reduction of the individual survival and their reproductive rates. So there are high risk of energy shortages. Around 70% of India's thermal power plants are likely to face water stress. Water in thermal power plants are used as a cooling agent. So it is severely hampering India's energy production as well as economic activity. Then there is risk of biodiversity destruction. So rich biodiversity of India faces a serious threat from human activities undertaken in pursuit of creating additional water sources. So as per the Niti Aayog report released in 2019, India is facing right now the worst ever water crisis in the history. Like cities like Bengaluru, cities like Chennai, all these cities are drying up. Approximately 600 million people, roughly around 45% of the population in India, are facing high to severe water stress. The report goes to say that nearly 40% of the population will have access to no drinking water by 2030, which is against your Sustainable Development Goal 6. And then it is expected that 6% of India's GDP will be lost by 2050 due to the water crisis. Then water storages in India is also around 209 million meter cube per person, which is far below the minimum threshold of 1000 meter per cube person for identifying the water scarcity in the country. So what is the way forward? The way forward is the use of efficient irrigation practices, micro irrigation practices, drip irrigation and sprinklers. The national water policy, the draft national water policy which was introduced in 2012, aims to govern the planning and development of the water resources and their optimum utilization. Then micro irrigation. So all these technologies which can help in achieving higher efficiency, which can reduce the use of water. Maybe you can use the conventional methods like mulching. Mulching can also help in reducing the evaporative losses and thereby saving water, and it also add on to the manure and the fertility of the soil. Then the use of traditional water management practices like Johads in Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan, Ahar Pine in Bihar, Zabo system of Nagaland. These are some traditional water management systems which are quite prevalent in different parts of the world. The national project on aquifer management. So we need to tap all the groundwater resources so that we can develop strategies to ensure a better participation Then what could be the way forward? The way forward is increasing water storage capacity. So rainwater harvesting in both urban and rural areas, farm, ponds, percolation of tanks, etc., decentralized water storages can help us to improve the water availability. The next is Atal Bhujal Yojana. This is a very important scheme which targets to recharge the groundwater sources and to ensure efficient use of water by involving people at local level. Then sustained measures to prevent pollution of water bodies. So contamination of groundwater to ensure proper treatment of the domestic and industrial wastewater, regulating industrial clusters and bioremediation. Then reducing the water consumption for agriculture, industry, household. If we can balance water consumption, it will also help in a efficient water management for our specific sector like agriculture, industry and household. Then adopting technologies that are much more advanced, like the present RO technology that we use, the reverse osmosis technology, or basically the ROs that we use at our home. So for every 1 liter, around 0.7 liters of water it is wasted. So how we can utilize this water in a much appropriate way is something that is what we are looking for. Then the UN World Water Development Report of 2018, which stresses on the nature-based solution to sustainably, economically manage the water resources. So what are the way forward? So we need some steps for the management of water, effective water governance, desalination to cope with the fresh water shortages, like many countries is establishing this. Desalination is when you are purifying seawater and converting it into a drinkable form. Then National River Linking Project. So interlinking project aims to address the issues of uneven distribution of water, but has proved to be contentious between the government and the civil society groups. Then model bill for conservation, protection, regulation of groundwater in 2016. Then adopting integrated water resource management based on 3 principles: social equity, which means equal access to water for all; economic efficiency, means bringing the greatest benefit to the greatest number of users possible with available financial and water resources, and ecological sustainability, which requires that aquatic ecosystems are acknowledged as users and adequate allocation is made to sustain natural functioning. Then Mir Shah Committee Report of 2016. So there is an urgent revamp of current water management system, change in both surface water and groundwater management policies, view the groundwater and surface water as an integrated in a holistic manner. So there is a need for restructuring. So restructure of your Central Water Commission, Central Groundwater Board, and constitute a National Water Commission to deal with the water policy, data and governance. So the National Water Policy of 2020, now this is very important. So India has drafted this national policy after three national water policies of 1987, 2002, 2012. So this is the most recent one, which is critical of tackling water quality issues and providing water security for all. So the silent feature of the draft National Water Policy of 2020 are the demand side policy, which recognizes the limits to endlessly increasing the water supply and proposes a shift towards the demand management. Then supply side, the shift in focus within the supply side because the country is running out of the sites for further construction of large dams, while the water table and the groundwater quality are fading in many areas. Then this water policy focuses on the 3 R's: reduction, reuse and recycle. Then wastewater treatment. So treatment of sewage, then eco-restoration of urban rivers as far as possible through decentralized watershed management is something that we can manage to restore our problem. Then check on the industrial water usage. Implementing the polluters pay principle. Implementing the polluters pay principle, which is I would say a necessary step that will have a detrimental impact on all the industries which are involved in pollution. Then what are the silent features of the draft National Water Policy? So water to reach farmers. So we need to create dams in a scientific way so that it can contain good amount of water, but it never reaches the farmers. This is accomplished according to the policy by utilizing pressurized closed conveyance pipelines, supervisory control, data acquisition systems, and pressurized micro irrigation systems. Then we need to build water storages. This is mounting evidence across the globe in favor of the nature-based solution for the water storages and supply. Especially curated blue-green infrastructure such as rain gardens, bioswales, restored rivers with wet meadows, wetlands constructed for bioremediation, urban parks, permeable pavements, green roof, etc. are proposed for urban areas. Then participatory water management. So the new water policy gives the highest priority to the sustainable and equitable management of groundwater. Then creation of National Water Commission for the holistic water management. Then one more problem that we are facing in the present world is the problem of urban flooding. So man-made disaster where the flooding of land and property in a built-up environment with a dense population takes place when the drainage system capacity is exceeded. So generally we have seen that our drains are clogged with plastic pollution, drains are clogged with industrial pollution. So it hinders the natural flow of the sewage system. When this hinders the water, whatever downpour that will happen in the urban areas, all of that downpour will run towards your cities, or it will rather choke the cities so that more water comes and it leads to the problem of flooding. So unlike rural flooding, this urban flooding is a concept that happens because of heavy precipitation. And yes, because of unplanned urbanization. Like we are witnessing floods in Bangalore, we are witnessing floods in Chennai, urban floods. This year we have witnessed floods in northern part of India, especially Punjab. Okay, so all these areas creating so many problems is because of the unplanned urbanization. Like even in this year you have seen that many buildings in Punjab, specifically the Zirakpur area, they are flooded with at least one floor in height. That means around 10 feet of water that was there in the cities, in the colonies. So imagine the amount of damage that all these floodings can create. Then what are the reasons for flooding? So the reasons are the direct factors such as natural factors which like the global climate change, changing weather patterns, heavy rainfall in short duration. These are some direct factors related with urban floods. Then man-made factors. Man-made factors like encroachment of the floodplains, continuous development, loss of natural drains, increased impervious areas like road, roofs, etc. are one more reason why we are seeing floods in urban area. Then indirect factors such as inadequate drainage system, on-road vehicle parking, attitude of the people, improper or no waste management. Then inadequate drainage infrastructure, terrain alteration.
So cities like Hyderabad, Mumbai rely on the old drainage system covering only a small part of the core city. So absence and poor maintenance of the storm water drains. This is one reason. Then incapacitating the present drain through encroachments and poor maintenance. Very little and no expansion of storm water drainage that has taken place while the population of the cities are rising exponentially. So these are the reasons that are responsible for urban floods. Then there are some other reasons like concretization of the urban areas, which basically reduces the seepage in the Indian cities, which become impervious, and in that sense the water cannot penetrate down, which ultimately fills up all the water bodies, the seaways, the nalas. Then unauthorized construction of low-lying areas. This is seen in almost every city. Every city has some unauthorized construction areas where the water get stagnant. Then indiscriminate and irresponsible disposal of solid waste. Illegal dumping of the construction debris. Then frequent and very high amount of erratic rainfall. This is also the reason which is creating the problems of urban floods. Storm surges and depressions in the open water. Basically, the cyclonic depressions are also the reason that create a kind of a flooding situation in urban areas. Heavy rainfall in the upper catchment areas can also cause flooding in the lower areas. So what could be the way forward? The way forward is, like I have already discussed, wetlands are the solution. So we need to start paying attention to the management of wetlands by involving local communities. Drainage planning. We need to plan our urban drainage in such a way, and not only just plan, but rather maintain these drainages so that there is a proper flow of water that can happen. Then water sensitive urban design, so that it can carry out or consideration of the topography, understanding the relief features, understanding the slope, understanding the natural drainage can also help in planning or saving yourself from the problem of the urban flooding. Then carrying out a proper vulnerability analysis and risk assessment of the areas. Like, you should know that how to regulate or what are the areas that are more prone to risk, so we can take all swift action way before a disaster, urban floods can hit. Then sponge cities, the concept of sponge cities, it is where the green infrastructure like plants, trees are used to absorb rainwater, to slow down the water flow and to purify it. Then creating green spaces, permeable spaces that will allow percolation of water in the city. Then using absorbent materials on the roads, sidewalks, parking lots, that will again help to absorb more water, absorb more water in seeping down the water. Then construction of landscapes which are designed to capture and filter and infiltrate the storm water. Building artificial wetlands and ponds. Okay, this can also help to reduce the damage caused by the floods. Then one old solution to water problems, rainwater harvesting. We can prevent a major chunk of water landing in the sewage system, and we can use that water for the domestic purposes such as irrigation, toilet flushing, and all other means. And then we need to set up a urban flood management system that will help to control recurring floods, and our response to the fault lines provide vulnerability to water security and more green spaces. This will make the city more resilient. So this is all about water conservation, guys. In the next session, I will start with the concept of sponge cities. A little portion of water management is still left. So guys, if you are preparing to join Sriram IAS for your upcoming UPSC CSE 24 exam, you can use this code Srirams, where you will get a flat 25% off on all your subscription. In the same subscription, you will also get optional as well as all 3 stages of the exam will be covered here. Your prelims, your mains, your interview, optional, answer writing, mentorship, everything will be covered under one subscription. So these are the list of optionals which are available. Then guys, I again want to inform you that this mission means that what we are running on YouTube for free, it comes live on every Saturday and Sunday. It comes live on every Saturday and Sunday. The Saturday session will be taken by Anshum sir. The Sunday session will be taken by Sanat sir. So I will be taking areas like environment and ecology, international relation. By the way, I have already taken 3 sessions on international relation. You can check the playlist in the channel as well as the link attached in the description box. Then I will also come up with polity. So polity I will start in the month of August. So there is one more session on environment that I will take in the month of that is the upcoming week. So Sanat sir will take art and culture, science and tech, and economy. So this is the division, and the remaining the remaining miscellaneous will be taken by both. So this is it for today's session, guys. Do not forget to hit like on this video, and you can share this video among your friends. So thank you very much.